Nobody hands you a list when you step into it. There's no meeting, no speech, no warning. You learn the rules by watching or by losing. And the ones who last the longest, they're not the toughest, not the loudest. They're the ones who understand something early. This isn't about what you do right. It's about what you never do wrong. At first it feels simple. Show up, do what you're told, keep your head down. But that's surface level. That's what everyone sees. Underneath that, there's another layer, unspoken rules that decide how people look at you, how they talk about you when you're not around, and whether your name comes up in the right rooms or quietly disappears from them without explanation. You won't hear these rules spoken out loud. Nobody pulls you aside and explains them. You're expected to pick them up just by being around, watching who gets respected, watching who gets ignored, and more importantly, watching who suddenly isn't there anymore. Because in this world, mistakes aren't corrected with warnings. They're corrected with distance, silence, and sometimes something final. The mistake most people make is thinking the rules are about survival. They're not. Survival is the result. The rules are about control. How you move, how you're seen, and how much space you take up. Break one, and it's not always immediate. Sometimes it builds. People watch. They wait. They decide. And by the time you realize something shifted, the decision's already been made without you. So if you're paying attention, you start to see the pattern. The ones who last aren't lucky. They're disciplined. They know when to speak, when to move, and when to disappear. They don't chase attention, and they don't test limits. Because once you understand the rules, you realize something simple. You're not being judged by what you say. You're being judged by what you allow yourself to do. The first rule is simple, and it's the one most people break early. Talk less than you know. Not some of it, not most of it, less than all of it. Because the moment people realize how much you're willing to say, they start measuring how much you can't control. And once that happens, you don't look useful anymore. You look like a liability waiting for the wrong moment to open your mouth. Rule 2, don't show off money. It sounds backwards, but flashing what you have doesn't make you respected. It makes you visible. And visibility is pressure, questions, attention you can't control. The people who last don't look rich. They look normal, because the second your lifestyle gets louder than your position, people start asking where it came from and whether it should still be yours. Rule 3, never disrespect the structure. Not directly, not indirectly, not even as a joke. Because respect isn't about feelings here. It's about order. And the second you make it seem like the structure can be questioned, you're not just disrespecting a person. You're testing the system. And systems don't correct you gently. They correct you permanently, so nobody else gets the idea to try the same thing. Rule 4, don't move without being told. Initiative sounds good on the outside, but here, it can get you in trouble fast. Because moving on your own means making decisions that affect other people's money, other people's territory, other people's problems. And if you step into something that isn't yours, even with good intentions, you're not seen as helpful. You're seen as someone who doesn't understand boundaries. Rule 5, never get too comfortable. The moment you start thinking things are stable, you stop paying attention. You talk a little more, move a little looser, Take small things for granted. And that's when mistakes start stacking, because nothing here stays the same for long. Positions shift, people change, and the ones who forget that are usually the ones who don't see the shift until it's already too late. Rule 6. Never assume you're safe. Just because nothing's happening doesn't mean nothing's being watched. People don't always react right away. They take note. They wait. They see patterns before they make decisions. And if you start moving like you've earned security, you relax in ways you shouldn't. That's when small mistakes stop looking small and start looking like someone who forgot how quickly things can change. Rule 7. Never bring unnecessary attention. Not to yourself, not to the people around you, not to the operation. Attention doesn't just come from noise. It comes from patterns. Moving too often, showing up too consistently, being seen in the wrong places. The wrong kind of attention doesn't warn you. It builds quietly, piece by piece, until suddenly people who weren't supposed to notice start paying very close attention. Rule 8. Never speak on things that aren't yours. Not your situation, not your business, not your lane. Because the second you start commenting on other people's moves, you're inserting yourself into decisions you weren't part of. And that creates problems you can't control. The ones who last understand this early. If it didn't come through you, it's not yours to explain, defend, or question. Rule 9. Never let emotion make your decisions. Frustration, pride, anger, all of it feels justified in the moment, but acting on it exposes you. It shows what gets under your skin, what can push you, what can be used against you. And once people see that, they don't forget it. Because controlled people are predictable, but emotional people, they're easy to set up without even realizing it. Rule 10. Never forget your position. Not what you think you are, what you actually are. Because the moment your behavior stops matching your place, people notice the gap. You start speaking out of turn, acting ahead of yourself, and that's when correction comes. Not because you did something big, but because you showed you don't understand where you stand, and that's something that gets fixed quickly. The next set of rules, these are different. Nobody says them out loud because they're not supposed to be obvious. You're expected to feel them, pick them up through tension, through reactions, through what changes when you walk into a room. And if you miss them, it won't be corrected directly. Things just start shifting around you until you realize you're not being treated the same anymore, and you don't know why. Rule 11. Never outshine the wrong person. Being sharp gets you noticed. Being better than someone above you gets you watched. Because this isn't about talent, it's about order. If your presence starts making someone higher up look weaker, it doesn't matter how useful you are. You've created tension in a place that depends on control. And tension like that doesn't get rewarded. It gets corrected quietly. Rule 12. Never move faster than your position allows. You might see opportunities. You might know the next step. But moving too fast creates questions. Who gave you that authority? Who approved that move? Even if it works, it doesn't matter. Because now you've shown you're willing to operate outside the structure. And once that's clear, people don't see you as ambitious. They see you as someone who can't be controlled. Rule 13. Never let people fully read you. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to manage. If people know how you think, how you react, what you want, they don't have to guess. And when they don't have to guess, they can position you without resistance. The ones who last keep something back, not secrets, control. Because once people think they understand you completely, they stop respecting you and start using you. Rule 14, never be the easiest option. If you're always available, always ready, always saying yes, you don't become valuable. You become convenient. And convenient people get used, not respected. The ones who last understand timing. They don't rush to prove themselves. They don't jump at everything. Because the moment people realize you'll always be there, they stop valuing when you show up at all. Rule 15, never correct someone in front of others, even if you're right, especially if you're right. Because correction isn't just about facts, it's about position. And when you challenge someone publicly, you force them to respond publicly. Now it's not about being right anymore, it's about control. And once that happens, you've created a situation that has to be handled, not because of what was said, but because of how it looked. Rule 16, never stay useful in the same way for too long. The more predictable your value becomes, the easier it is to replace you. People start seeing you as a function, not a person. And once that happens, loyalty doesn't protect you, because functions get swapped out when something better shows up. The ones who last evolve quietly. They shift what they do before anyone thinks they need to. Rule 17, never make people choose between you and them. Not directly, not indirectly. Because the moment someone has to pick, they're not choosing loyalty, they're choosing stability. And stability usually isn't you. The ones who last don't force decisions. They position themselves so they're never in the middle of one. Because once you become a choice, you've already made yourself a risk. Rule 18, never react too fast. Fast reactions feel strong, but they show everything. What bothers you, what pressures you, what you didn't expect. And once that's visible, it can be used. The ones who last slow everything down. They listen longer than they speak. They let situations develop before they move. Because control isn't about speed. It's about timing you can manage. Rule 19, never let people define your value out loud. The second your worth gets discussed openly, it becomes negotiable. People start attaching numbers, limits, expectations you didn't set. And once that happens, you're no longer in control of how you're seen. The ones who last keep their value quiet. It's understood through results, not explained through words. The last set of rules. These are the ones that decide everything. You won't hear them. You won't see them written anywhere. But they're always there, shaping how long someone lasts. Because at this level, it's not about mistakes anymore. It's about presence, patterns, memory. And the ones who understand this, they don't just survive. They stay in places where other people slowly disappear without explanation. Rule 20, never be remembered the wrong way. Being known isn't the goal. Being remembered is the risk. Because memory connects patterns, faces, moments. And once enough of those connect, you stop being a person. You become something people can point to. The ones who last move clean and leave no imprint. They're around when needed and gone when they're not. Rule 21, never become predictable. Predictability feels safe, but it creates patterns. Same places, same times, same reactions. And patterns don't just make you easier to understand. They make you easier to track, to anticipate, to control. The ones who last change rhythm without warning. Not enough to stand out, just enough to never be mapped out completely. Rule 22. Never let your name carry weight in the wrong rooms. The more your name travels, the less control you have over how it's used. People repeat things, add things, twist things, and before you know it, you're part of conversations you were never in. The ones who last keep their name contained. It moves only where it needs to, and nowhere else. Rule 23. Never stay in the same position too long. Not because you need more, but because staying still makes you visible. People start to measure you, compare you, question you, and once that starts, your presence becomes something to evaluate. The ones who last shift before that happens. Not dramatically, not noticeably, just enough to stay ahead of being defined. Rule 24. Never let silence turn against you. Silence can protect you or isolate you. If people stop hearing your name completely, they don't always assume you're disciplined. Sometimes they assume you're not involved anymore. And once that idea settles in, you stop being considered when things move. The ones who last manage silence carefully. Present enough to exist, quiet enough to avoid attention. Rule 25. Never let people see what you depend on. The moment someone understands what you need, they understand how to control you. Whether it's money, position, approval, or access, dependence creates leverage, and leverage invites pressure. The ones who last keep their needs hidden, not because they don't have them, but because once they're visible, they can be used. Rule 26. Never let your wins look like someone else's loss. Even when you gain, it can't feel like you took it. Because perception creates tension faster than reality. If someone believes your progress cost them something, they won't see your success. They'll see a problem. The ones who last move in ways that don't trigger that reaction, so nothing ever needs to be addressed directly. Rule 27. Never let your circle define your future. The people around you can support you, or quietly limit you. If everyone moves the same, thinks the same, reacts the same, your ceiling becomes theirs. And in this world, ceilings aren't explained. They're enforced. The ones who last understand when to stay connected and when to create space without making it obvious. Rule 28. Never ignore small changes. Big problems don't show up all at once. They build through small shifts. Tone, timing, access, reactions. A conversation that feels shorter. A look that lingers too long. Being left out of something you were always part of. The ones who last notice early and adjust quietly. Because once small changes turn into clear patterns, it's usually already too late to fix them. By the time you understand all of this, you realize something simple. It was never about strength, never about being the smartest in the room. It's about discipline, control, and knowing what not to do. The ones who last don't win by doing more. They last by avoiding the things that end everyone else. If this makes sense to you, the full breakdown is linked in the description. Read it when you're ready.